What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of In The Crosshairs, your definitive source for sports betting content and in-game analysis. I'm your host, JoJo Cottle. Hi. We are here coming to you live from the Line Sniper studio to bring you everything there is to know this week in sports. First, we're going to talk a little bit of football. We have Sam Dusenberry. He's going to take a look at some lines for us and maybe give us some fantasy football advice. We also have Andy Molitor here today to talk about the NBA playoffs that kicked off last night and to tell us what to look for in the first round this week. And last, but certainly not least, we have the professor of sports betting. Red Dave is going to take us through this week in the MLB. Who to pick, who to pass, and how to make some money. We have all of this coming up in this episode of In The Crosshairs, brought to you by Line Sniper. And if you want even more of the best sports betting content around, you can find all of that on our YouTube channel. That's Line Sniper HQ on YouTube, and check us out there, and don't forget to subscribe. But it's time to get the show started and talk about some sports, guys. And where better to start than with some NFL? All right, September 10th. We are so very close to the beginning of NFL season, which does kick off with the reigning Super Bowl champions, the Chiefs, against the Texans. I'm excited. I know everyone else can't wait to actually have some football back. And let's bring in our man, Sam Dusenberry, to tell us all about it. Sam, happy to have you. How are you doing today?
JoJo, what's going on? Glad I could step in here and talk some football with you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And Sam, we have some football to talk about, so let's get to it. And actually, to start off, we're going to look at some odds provided by our friends over at ESPN. Earlier this week, the team over there sort of invented some betting lines, and we're going to run you through a handful of them, and you're going to tell us if it's a bet or a pass and which side you're taking. So let's take a look at these first. Sam, we have a line on the Buffalo Bills. That's Bills win plus 4.5 versus the combined wins of the games of the Giants and the Jets. So can the Bills get close to the combined win total of the other teams? Next, we have a little player versus player action. Nick Chubb versus Dalvin Cook for rushing yards. Nick Chubb, the favorite here by nearly 200 rushing yards, but can Cook play a little catch-up? And last, a little easy over-under. We have Matt Stafford on the Detroit Lions. Will he pass for over or under 4,350 yards in this upcoming season? All right, Sam, that's the three lines. Work your magic. What do you like here, if anything?
All right, so let's go back to the top, right? So Buffalo, the plus 4.5. I actually think that's a pretty good bet. Like when you look at the Jets and the Giants, let's go with the Jets first. The Jets will have the second hardest schedule in the entire NFL. Adam Gase is still the coach of this team. When you look at Le'Veon Bell, we don't know what's going to happen with that running game. And Jamal Adams and C.J. Mosley are no longer on the team. C.J. opting out and Jamal Adams obviously getting traded to Seattle. So when you look at that Jet team, they're going to be a joke again. The Giants, depending on allegedly Danny Dimes, I don't believe in that. Saquon Barkley is a monster, but to me, I just don't have any faith in that Giants offensive line, which is with a whole bunch of young prospects in this coming into this season. When you look at Saquon, it's going to be a one-man wrecking crew. I don't have any faith in Daniel Jones. I really think that the Buffalo Bills, with that stingy defense that's coming back with a whole bunch of starters, plus they added Josh Norman, I think the Bills can really get that 4.5. So that's a bet that I would actually put some money on. When it comes to the MVP, I think you got to let Russ cook. That's what the 12 is saying out in Seattle. They want Russell Wilson to do damage this year. They want Pete Carroll to open that offense up and stop being so balanced. I think this is the year that they let Russell really prove his worth, especially off the heels of that contract that he just got. So I would go with plus 700 Russell Wilson to be the MVP for this year. Lastly, when it comes down to looking at fantasy prospects, looking at who I like in the first round, when it comes down to that, obviously you want Patrick Mahomes, you want that QB, but there's going to be an early run on running backs. So for me, I would focus on that young second tier running backs and try to scoop those up in the first or second round. Back half of the first round, top half of the first. And the main one I'm looking at is Miles Sanders. When you look at what he can do with the production off the field, especially in the PPR format, I like to think he can get it done. So that's what I'm looking at with these formats.
All right, well, there you have it. And actually, you answered a question I was going to ask earlier about Patrick Mahomes, but we'll get to that later. So it seems like you have some faith in the Bills, and you like Dalvin Cook to smash the odds and Matt Stafford to keep blowing out past predictions. Well, all right, and you know what? We're going to mark those. We're going to mark those bets down at the end of the show, and we're going to come back to them at the end of the season just to see how good our resident psychic, Mr. Dusenberry, really is. But Sam, let's switch gears to something we had touched on last week, the MVP picture. Obviously, it's a long ways out, but we heard Joey Kanish say, if you're gonna play futures this season, you gotta play them very carefully. So I wanna hear your thoughts on the MVP picture. Who do you like to actually see take this home? Is there any money to be made at this point? Do you see anyone getting an MVP this year? Tell us all the good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And that's my bad on that. I jumped the gun with the whole Russell Wilson
You're
take. But what I
fine, no
will do is
worries.
go back and give you the Nick Chubb versus Dalvin Cook. Nick Chubb is going to have to split time with Kareem Hunt. I don't think that's going to factor in major in terms of what he can do in terms of production off the backfield. Dalvin Cook, I think, actually will remain healthy for the better part of this season. So I would go with him in regards to that running back comparison and to finish it up there with Matt Stafford. There's three things in life: death, taxes, and Matt Stafford throwing a hell of a bunch for Detroit. So there's no way that he comes in at under 4,300, which is what I think the ESPN line was. So go ahead and take care of that Matthew Stafford. To me, that's the easiest out of all of these bets that they like projected and did the player props on. So for Matthew Stafford, go ahead and smash that over. And Russell Wilson, let him cook. You paid him the money, let him go cook and earn that. I think plus 700 is really good value for him. So I think let Danger Russ do his thing, plus 700. Go ahead and hit that.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thanks for clearing that up. And big money Russell Wilson to get his NFL MVP status this year. That would certainly help justify that $140 million contract extension. But Sam, we had someone ask us on our socials to talk a little bit about the fantasy football season. Now, I know you're pretty good in your fantasy. Can you give us some of those first and second round picks that people don't want to miss?
Right. So, it's all about the format, right? So as I said, there's going to be a run, or at least off the projections I've seen off the little practice mock drafts I've done, there's been a really big run on the running backs early. So with that in mind, if you're in that 7 to 10 range or 7 to 12, if you're in a 12-man league, you're not going to be able to get the upper echelon running backs in that mid-tier first round spot. So for me, I would go for Patrick Mahomes, get that top QB, lock him in, especially if all the run is going to happen on the running backs early. Then go into that second round, you want to get the young running backs. Kenyon Drake, I talked about Miles Sanders earlier. There's a lot of young running backs in this league that I think you could really push out and really get some really good value on and be ahead of the game. Because we all know the big names. We know Dak Prescott, Christian McCaffrey, Travis Henry. We know all those guys. Those guys are going to be gone. Who are you going to get if all those top running backs, if you do go Mahomes early in the first round or mid-tier in the first round, who are you going to scoop up in that second round? I still think it'll be too early to go for a receiver. You're going to go get a young running back, and now you have Mahomes and a young running back, and I think away we go.
I mean, Pat Mahomes in the first round is kind of a no-brainer, but definitely don't let him slip by if someone else fails to scoop him up early. And Miles Sanders had some very good returns last fantasy season, so it might be an easy one for people to skip over. So there you go, a little bit of futures, a little bit of fantasy, even taking the bets from our boys over at ESPN. Sam Dusenberry giving the fans a little bit of everything this week. Well, Sam, thank you so much, and we'll have you back towards the end of the show for your best bets of the week. But for now, let's get our future NFL season out of the way and talk about what's happening right now in the NBA. All right, the NBA playoffs are here, and in fact, they're already going strong. Yesterday, we had our first 3-round matchups. Earlier today, the Magic beat the Bucks. We have the Heat and the Pacers playing, well, right now. And before we move on to some basketball and get some more played, let's talk about this some more. At this time, we're gonna bring in Andy Molitor to run through this bracket. Andy, how are you feeling? Are the playoffs going well for you? How about your wallet?
Yeah, I mean, we're still early. It's only, 5 games deep. I've made multiple bets in today. We're starting looking into tomorrow's lines already, but it could have gotten worse, I guess. I've done okay in the little 8-game mini season we had there at the end, so things cashed out there nicely.
Well, Andy, I had mentioned a minute ago, but we have some basketball going on right now. A little too late to bet on the Heat and the Pacers, but we have the Thunder Rockets tip off at 6:30 and the Trailblazers versus the Lakers at 9. Andy, who wins tonight and what do the lines look like?
Yeah, that actually worked out nice, I guess, all things considered. I didn't make any bets in the early games. I didn't want to lay all the points with Milwaukee. I had no faith in Orlando. I guess that was a mistake on my part. That would have been just an easy, no doubt snoozer win. Like you said, Miami's going on right now. I did take some Houston money line, and I got that at plus 110. I'm still fine playing that to flat. The Westbrook news is kind of rough for the team, but at the same time, the net rating isn't a whole lot different. Actually, there are people that have made arguments that the team is better with Harden on the floor and Westbrook off. So I don't think they should be a dog. They're actually favored in the series, and I get it, making them a slight dog to start just because of the Westbrook missing. But it's this gym, people have made the case that the gym might shoot cold, that people wouldn't play as well in an empty gym like this, but the shooting's been fine. The scoring's been fine. We have one team that on average shoots 15 more 3-pointers a game than the other. I'm going to take the offense at to pick them here. With Westbrook out, Harden's going to shoot a trillion free throws, get to the line of done. Dort's out for OKC. He's been a great defender, young Canadian kid. That's going to hurt their defense. I'm super excited not to lay points with the Rockets right now with this offense. So I took plus 110. I think it's probably minus 110 right now. It's gotten steam. That's the tough part about betting it this close to game time. These are bets I made pretty much yesterday, as well as the Lakers. Even worse with the Lakers. I laid minus 4.5 when it opened. I laughed. I thought that was going to open 6. I guess that's probably what it would have opened if we'd had a regular season, if we wouldn't have had some overreactions here. I don't buy into the Portland hype. I know plenty of sharp people who do that are on the other side of this, and God bless them, I guess. But I'm not a big narrative street guy, but if there is ever a letdown spot, it's coming off playing your butts off for 8 games plus the play-in, and then having to get it done against one of the best teams in the West. Zach Collins is out. That doesn't help when you have to start, God knows what at the forward spot. I just can't add the numbers up and get to a 4.5. I made the true line 6.5 or 7, which that's what it's up to at this point. It is minus 6.5. I'm not super excited about giving that out as a play you should make at minus 6.5 or 7 if it does keep dipping here. If you can find a 6 or 5.5, some rogue spots, definitely I would play that. It sucks to miss Rondo and Bradley for the Lakers, but this Portland's a bottom 5 defensive rating team for the year. I don't know how they keep it that close.
Okay. All right. Well, the Lake Show looks like it cannot be canceled. And of course, after some of those games shake out, we will have a much clearer picture of how these playoffs are going to look and who has more of a shot. But we did have a full set of games last night, and we have the first wins going out in these matchups. We'll have either the Nuggets or the Jazz versus the winners of the Clippers versus the Mavericks in the West. And on the east side of the bracket, we will have the Celtics or the Sixers facing off against the Raptors Nets. As of last night, the Nuggets, Celtics, Clippers, and Raptors are all up 1 after the first round. So, Andy, I wanted to get your take on these games and how that early win can affect how these teams play. And who do you have walking out of this first round?
Yeah, so it's a little weird without the home court advantage. You don't get the traveling back home after the 2 games. You go down 2-0, but you don't maybe psychologically you don't feel that bad because you can say, we haven't lost a game at home. They were supposed to win those games at their home court. But once you get down 2-0, you don't have that respite. You don't get to say, we're heading to our home gym. We can maybe steal a couple at home, make this a series again. So it'll be really interesting once we get to that third game for some of these teams that do end up, and I guess somebody doesn't have to end up down 2-0, but it'd be awful weird if they all went 1-1. So somebody's going to be down 2-0, and it'll be interesting to see if they do quit or if they make drastic changes as they're put in some sort of desperate situation. So I'm not too excited about betting the second game in a lot of these series, especially since, for the most part, the 4 games that were played yesterday, that they'll play also tomorrow, the exact same matchups, they're not changing the lines a ton. They did give the Raptors a little more respect. They jacked that up a couple points. Essentially, they put out the same line on the 76ers. I was looking at laying the 6.5. I really wish I would have, because now Gordon Hayward went out for the Celtics. I guess I was expecting him to miss a game or two, so I didn't think once they announced it the line would go crazy, but apparently he's worth 2 points to the line, which is lunacy. So I'm probably going to have to stay away from the Philly game and just look. I'm still waiting on a couple of Nuggets, and it's funny I mentioned Nuggets. I'm probably going to bet Utah +4. They essentially made the same line. I think they played better in the first game. It came down right to it. They went to overtime. If they're going to give me a similar line, I'm probably going to play anything better than like 3.5. So I'll probably be on Utah +4. I liked them a lot. I played them in the first game. Heartbreaker, lost it in overtime. And then that leaves the Clippers game, and I don't know quite what to make of that, although I am loving the offense from both teams. It was kind of a goofy one with some technicals at the end. They were a little soft, but I'm looking at the over in that one. I haven't done much with that yet. But as far as advancing, the Utah series is going to be a kind of a fight. Probably goes 6-7 games. Maybe we see that with Philly, Boston now with some injuries. But the other one, like Toronto and the Clippers, I do think they take care of business, move on.
All right, so the Jazz might not be the underdogs for much longer. Well, they are 0-1 in their matchup against the Denver Nuggets so far. But look for them to bring it back. And Andy, before we let you go off too easily, we've talked about pretty much everything in the playoffs, and there's a lot to pick up from here. But to step it back from the teams and look at the players, Andy, do you have any player props for us this week? Any moneymakers you see this week?
Yeah, I did mention earlier that Zach Collins was out for Portland. So to stick more money on my Lakers here, I guess, and I hate the Lakers. I'm a Timberwolves fan. They knocked us out of the playoffs like the last time we were in 10, 15 years ago. But with Zach Collins out, they're going to start something called Wenyen Gabriel in their front court there. So I am looking at Anthony Davis over rebounds. It's funny, Gabriel, he's been with the team. He's played. He's had some minutes. He's only had 33 minutes in the bubble so far. He's only had one start this entire season, which is kind of goofy because it's a season that goes all the way back to, last November, October, somewhere in there. But it's funny, he has one start ever in his career. It was against the Lakers. It was kind of an odd game. It was the first game back after the tragic Kobe passing. So I don't know what to make of that box score in that one anyway, that the Lakers lost. But AD in that game pulled down 16 rebounds. He's got 50 pounds and an inch or two on this kid. Obviously, they're going to get him help. I can see Nurkic helping, but I think 10.5 rebounds was kind of a light line. I could see him taking 12, 13, 14. Like I said, he had 16 in the last matchup. I even played a couple alternates, over 12, over 13, a few of those.
Okay, so many games this postseason have revolved around whether or not AD shows up and puts up big numbers. And it plays off, and the playoff time. But if he's been saving anything, he's going to empty the tank now. So look out for Davis to blow out the overs. Well, thank you so much for those picks, Andy, and we'll be sure to check up on you next week to see how your picks go and get the outlook on the finals. But in the meantime, just sit back and we'll see you at the end of the show for some fan questions. And let's switch gears one more time and get over to the MLB to see what's going on in the dugouts. The Cardinals returned to action over the weekend, but it seems we're not allowed to have a full MLB weekend, as the Reds versus Pirates had to be postponed due to another positive COVID test. However, baseball keeps going and we have another week jam-packed with games. So, luckily, we have the professor of all things sports betting, Red Dave, here to talk some Moneyball. How are you?
I'm doing real well, and it's been an exciting day so far with a big upset in basketball and got a nice Yankees game coming up, which I'd like to talk about. So, yeah.
Glad to hear it. And Dave, let's get straight into these ball games. Reds are out for now, but no one's happy about that. So what do you have we have a lot of baseball to cover, so let's just keep going since I clearly can't speak English here. We have the Athletics against the Diamondbacks. Great. We have the Athletics against the Diamondbacks, as well as the Yankees that you wanted to talk about, versus the Rays tonight, and a whole set of games tomorrow, including the possibility that the Royals-Reds games isn't canceled, which seems like a long shot. Dave, walk us through the week. Who do you like? Where's the smart money going?
Well, I can walk you through the Yankees game. I don't really know much about the other one. I've just been kind of zoned in on the Yankees tonight. When I first covered this game last night, I was really counting on the Yankees starting a bunch of lefties against Snell, Blake Snell, who's also a lefty, who just is kind of a stud, kind of crushes lefties. But unfortunately, I just looked at the lineup for the Yankees, and they're playing a bunch of righties, which I expect because they're a smart team. They're going to play the platoon against Snell. But I still like the Rays minus 120 and minus 125 here. And let's face it, the Yankees are out. Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, and DJ LeMahieu is kind of like borderline MVP candidates. So three of their best players are out. They're playing some pretty solid replacements, but here I would go with the Rays. This is a huge game, even though it's, home field advantage doesn't mean what it used to mean. But I think the Rays will trot Snell out there for about 75, 80 pitches. I think they will go hard at this one. Yankees are still a great team, one of the best in the league, but I still like the Rays here.
Yeah, the Rays have been looking pretty solid recently, and with the weakened Yankees lineup, Red Dave likes them to clean up tonight. And Dave, across all of the games you mentioned, and even ones you didn't, are there any player props we should be watching out for?
Yeah, let's stick right with this game. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I'm a big Blake Snell stan. I've followed this guy for the past couple of years. He's probably lost me more money than he's won me, but he's actually bloomed into a borderline Cy Young candidate. He's obviously been fantastic for a couple of years. I would like to play him over 5.5 strikeouts at minus 150, minus 160. I was really hoping that the Yankees would play lefties because he really smashes lefties. He strikes them out about 31% of the time. But the guys that the Yankees put in tonight, they got Luke Voit batting leadoff. He's like a 35% strikeout guy. They got Gary Sanchez batting the 5-hole. He's about a 43% strikeout guy, so that's not so good. He's a 14K per 9 guy. I think the main thing with Snell is his pitch count. They've been kind of easing him in. Last start, he got 70 pitches against the Red Sox, 5 innings. I think here, such a high leverage game, they really want to beat the Yanks, I think, for the division standings. So I think they might pitch him maybe like 75, 80 here. And 5.5 Ks for a guy who strikes out 14 per 9. Yeah, I'll take that.
Well, tonight it's Tanaka versus Snell on the mound, but Red Dave likes Snell to beat the 5.5 and have a solid night of pitching overall. Well, that is this week in the MLB. But Dave, I did want to talk to you about the future, a little bit of, what we're going to see in baseball, or at least futures props. Dave, at this point in the season, are there any championship or league winners or props that you like?
Yeah, I like the A's to win the World Series at about plus 1,200. And first of all, if I say plus 1,200, be greedy. Please shop for a better line. When I first touted the A's, I liked them at plus 2,200, and that was when Verlander was out. Right now, they're leading the Astros by about 3.5 games in the division. They're playing about as well as the Yankees. As hard as it for me to say. They have an elite defense. They have a very balanced and strong offense. They don't have a great pitching staff, but it's balanced by a strong bullpen and just an overall really well-balanced, really well-coached team. So given their lead right now, given I think they're pretty much a lock to make the playoffs. I would certainly bet them at plus 1,200 for the World Series. And if you can find a good line to win the division, I think the Astros probably aren't as good as they are, and the Astros are chasing them by 3.5 games. So either way, I'm really bullish on the A's right now.
All right, well, there you have it. Everything you need to bet on the MLB this week. But Red Dave, you're not going anywhere because we're going to actually bring back the other two analysts and answer some questions from their fans at home. Sam, Andy, welcome back, gentlemen. We have some questions for each of you here. And of course, if any of you at home would like to submit any of your questions to us and for one of our analysts, just reach out to us on our social at LineSniperHQ and we'll be sure to get them answered for you. But first, let's take it over to the fan questions we have got. And Sam, you have the first one here. Connor from St. Louis has a question that, well, I'm assuming he has a pretty specific bet in mind. But anyway, Sam, they want to know if you had to put money down, what will be the name of the new Washington football team?
Wow, with that one, there's the obvious favorite, right? The Red Tails are sitting about 3-1 last time I checked. But there are some wacky ones in there. The Washington Generals, that's a team that's notorious for losing. I don't know why. I mean, well, the Washington football team's also kind of known for losing lately, so maybe it is some sort of synergy there. But I think you got to go with the Red Tails. There's a lot of symbolism behind it. You know, Vegas knows. So, I mean, 3-1 odds, I mean, that's a pretty heavy favorite in comparison to everything else. So I think it's the safe bet here. Daniel Snyder, you know, it took him this long just to get to this point where he would actually change the name. I think at this point, he just would go ahead and do the right thing, and maybe he'll place a bet himself. And if he does place a bet, it should be on the Red Tails, because that should be the best name.
Interesting. Well, I know here in the studio we had a bet going for the Washington Warriors, so we'll see if that sounds pretty good. And thanks for your answer, Sam. The next question is for you, Red Dave, coming in from Lou in Orlando. National League Cy Young Award. Who wins it? Does DeGrom complete the hat trick?
I'd say he's the best pitcher in the NL right now in terms of which pitcher do you want front-loading your roster, your rotation. I'd take DeGrom. I think he's about 5-1 right now. I think actually Trevor Bauer, who's just pitching his tail off, is the front runner here, about plus 400. But I think the smart money, or if you like long odds, I would take Aaron Nola on the Philadelphia Phillies. He's about plus 1,200. Obviously, if you can get better, take it. He's been pitching real well. He's got a really high K rate. He tends to blow up, but so does Trevor Bauer. You could also make a good argument for Scherzer at plus 1,500. Yeah, I really love DeGrom. He's the best pitcher. If you get him at plus 500, why not? But if you want a long shot, I'd probably go with Aaron Nola, 1,200, something like that.
All right. Well, thank you, Dave. And Andy, don't worry, we didn't forget about you, bud. Marcus from New York City wants to know, do you see a world where the Nets beat Toronto? Or should Brooklyn just come back next season?
Yeah, I mean, no. The answer is no, buddy. It was pretty rough up there. And I will say, I bet the Nets to win the title during the purgatory period where we didn't know if we were getting a season or not. Mm-hmm. They were 300-1, and the thought was maybe we have a season so late that possibly Durant gets back, Kyrie, everybody's healthy. Obviously, we do have a season. It was late. None of that happened. Durant and Irving didn't play, and then Chandler, Claxton, DeAndre Jordan, Spence, everybody. I mean, there was COVID cases and opt-outs. Like, they're down to a skeleton crew. They've been a lot of fun in this bubble, the 8-game bubble series, but they just don't have it. They don't have what it takes to get past Toronto in that defense. So that's better luck next year. Building for the future. They got a hell of a roster going forward.
Sorry, Marcus, there's your answer. Unfortunately, the odds are not too kind for the boys from Brooklyn in this playoff bracket. Well, thank you guys at home so much for sending those questions in. And remember, you can always ask us any questions anytime on our social media at LineSniperHQ. But before we say our goodbyes and goodnights, we have one more very important segment to take care of, and that is our best bets of the week. Every show, we ask our analysts to give us the number one bet they have and that they're taking this week. Whatever sport, whatever game, whatever they want. And Andy, let's start with you. Where are you putting your money down this week?
I haven't seen this up yet, but it's a derivative that you can derive by yourself if you just do a little math. And like I talked about the Toronto defense, Toronto's not even really playing defense because they don't have to. They're just relying on the offense, who's just much, much better than the Nets. With a total of 226, favored by 11, the team total for Toronto tomorrow should be 119.5, 120. I'm going to take the over there. They're going to coast to 120 points. I think we see a real similar game to the first one there. They scored, what was it? I'm looking here, $134 last time. I think 120, no sweat. I love my Raptors this year.
Well, it should be a nice little bet to make us a little money there. And Sam, you're up. Got anything wild for us? Got any money on the Washington football team's new name, perhaps? What's your bet looking like?
I'm going to go to the basketball hardwood. I'm going to go down to the bubble in Orlando. I think tonight you could get some real good value. I hopped on the over for Houston and OKC. I got it at 224. I know it's moved up a little bit to 225 now, but I still think even that is a plausible over. Harden's going to go crazy tonight. The fact that they won't have Russell Westbrook, I think it puts more pressure on him, and they just chuck up a lot of shots. They are a three-point barrage type of team. They're going to put up a lot of points tonight. OKC, they have the defensive awareness. They have a lot of guys who play defense, but teams like to fall into the trap of what the Houston Rockets do. Teams like to try to keep up with the Rockets instead of staying within themselves and playing their way. They like to run up and down and jack up the threes just like Houston. So I think OKC with the point fraud and CP3, and when you have Steven Adams and guys like that, I think they'll be able to put up a lot of points as well. So I'm taking that over tonight. OKC Houston game 1, 224.5.
All right, there you have it, straight from our man Sam to all of you at home. And last but never least, Red Dave, how are you going to win some money this week?
I probably follow Sam's bet. I like that over. I was going to say, because I'm more of a props guy, I'll probably take Eric Gordon, who's kind of come out of nowhere. He's kind of like when Russell Westbrook is out, he's a sneaky kind of take over when Harden's on the bench for like 5 minutes, a half. He really takes over, and I've actually bet pretty much every Eric Gordon over I can find. 16.5 points, 2.5 3-pointers, 20.5 points, rebounds, assists. He is going to just run up to the 3-point line and chuck because he doesn't know how to run an offense. He's just like Harden. He just dribbles. Oh, he's obviously not Harden, but he doesn't pass. He just takes threes, drives to the cup. So Gordon's my man tonight. I think he's healthy. He's going to put up some numbers tonight.
And there you have it. Those are the bets our experts trust to win some money this week. So thank you for those picks, gentlemen. And if you missed any of those bets or need to catch up on some of this week's advice, you can find this episode, betting courses, and so much more all on our YouTube channel, Line Sniper HQ. We'll be back at 4:30 Eastern on Thursday with all of the games for the weekend and everything you need to know to up your sports betting. This has been In the Crosshairs, brought to you by LineSniper.com, your definitive resource for sports betting content and in-game analysis. For the team here in the studio, I'm JoJo Cottle, and thanks so much for watching.